Hey class, so I am in a meeting during our class today. Um, so what you'll be doing is finishing up first our Age of Imperialism notes that we were doing last class, and then you'll continue on once everybody is finished with the Age of Imperialism notes. Um, with a partner, you'll begin reading the British colonialism exploration into Australia. So if you could go ahead and open up the agenda on Schoology. If you need to pause the video for a moment, open that up, and then we'll continue forward. Okay, so you'll open up the Cornell note-taking document. So you'll click on this Cornell note-taking document, and it should take you back to the notes that we were taking last class. I will open up yours for P5. And we had began working on this together last class. So you're going to be finishing this up with me today. You will be doing some reading on your own, and then you will be following along with taking the notes with me. My biggest word of advice is do not just copy down the notes and skip over the reading. Or copy down the notes and follow along with the video. You need to follow along with the video because I do explain some of the ideas of where I get this information from. And also, I'll be telling the sub that you should be taking 15 minutes to complete this first. So she will expect that you will be following along with this as well. All right, so we had finished up at main idea 5. If you want to go ahead and do the inserting horizontal lines and adding main idea 6, go ahead and add that. So for the reading, what I would like you to do is now pause the video, and I want you to take a couple of minutes and read through in the New Zealand portion. So if you're looking at, and I can pull this up on our formative, if you are looking at the article, the Age of Imperialism article that we were reading last time, and of course formative doesn't want to work for me right now, so I'm going to have a nice awkward jump to this part, but in the Age of Imperialism document, which you'll have a hard copy of, you'll scroll down, and we had stopped at New Zealand. So what I would like you to do is pause the video, take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, however long it takes to read this first paragraph. Don't go on to the second paragraph yet, and really think about how there are 2 different main ideas in here. So you'll have your first main idea, and then roughly I will give you a heads up that the second main idea will come after musket wars. So pause the video and do that. Now that I've finished reading and that you finished reading that paragraph, what I would like you to do is to go back to your Cornell notes and think about in that first half up to where it says musket wars, what is the main idea in this paragraph? What is the main idea that's occurring here? And as I think through this, the main idea, I would argue, is that the Maori, unlike the Aborigines, Maori in New Zealand had a warrior culture. So I get my main idea there, and I now have to support these details. So take a moment and think. When at the beginning it says that the Maori were agriculturalists, but they had this warrior element, and they were used to using what? Guns. Maori were warriors and used guns from trading. So this clues me into something really important, that they were already having interactions with people, possibly Europeans and others, before the New Zealand lands got settled. So that would be one of the questions that I would think of. So I would say, what were the original interactions the Maori had with non-Maori before colonization? So this is an open question. It's not a yes or no. And it's also a thick question because it is something that I would have to go look up. I'd have to do some research on. So this would help me get to extending an inquiry. So if I were trying to go for my extending, then I could be coming up with a question like this. Another thing that I would notice here is that there was intertribal warfare already occurring in New Zealand, and that eventually, or that these tribal wars were called the Musket Wars. So all of this information I gather from that paragraph. So I have my main idea, and I have all these things that support this idea that Maori had a warrior culture. One of the things that I wonder as I read this is, in this intertribal warfare, and that these tribal wars were called the Musket Wars, did these tribal wars stop after colonization? I want you to take a moment and think about this question. First, is it open or closed? If you said closed, then you are correct, it is closed. So, would this get me an extending an inquiry? No. You could leave the question here if you wanted to. Maybe it is something that you want to try and come back to later on, but I just want you to recognize that this would not necessarily give you an extending an inquiry. It would just merely be a question. So for the sake of clarity on here, I'm going to delete that question. And now I want to move on to main idea 6. So I'm going to pause the video and update my document so I can add in main idea 7. So I've updated my document to have main idea 7. When I look back at this main idea is going to come through this second part of the paragraph. And this is really talking about the Europeans starting to come into New Zealand lands. So this to me is about Europeans or European relations with the Maori early on. Things change as time passes, but early on, this is some of the things that I noticed. And if we look at the document, it says that first, it was mostly based on trade and mission work. So, first interactions were mostly trade and mission work. And I'm going to make a note here, and you don't have to add this in there, but most of the mission work that would occur at this time was generally Europeans trying to spread Christianity to the places that they went to. That was the main religion that was occurring in these missions. Another thing that I noticed is right after that, the Treaty of Waitangi is signed in 1840, and it gives British citizenship, Treaty of Waitangi, if I could spell here, Treaty of Waitangi in 1840 gives Maori British citizenship and British Empire Maori lands. Hopefully you're thinking, well, that seems a little odd. How could they all of a sudden just say, well, now we own your lands? During this time, when they were signing this off, the idea of land ownership on what the British Empire thought of British or land ownership versus what the Maori thought of land ownership were two very different things. So this is something that does help me understand how the relations were early on, but this treaty is going to be what really lends its hand to the changes later between these relations. And finally, tying into this, the meaning interpretation of treaty is very different between British and Maori. So that is our third point or third detail that supports that main idea 7. What I would like you to do is still, although we're not going to add the main idea 8 on right now, I want you to take a moment and still read through that final paragraph. My expectation is that you know this information, so if you end up having to come up with something or use this information later on, you are aware of it. So I'm going to pause and give you a moment to read that. Now we're awkwardly jumping to a new part of the recording. So I just want to talk really quick about questions. We mentioned that they need to be open, they need to be thick, but if I were to write a question like, what if the Maori had beat the British? Think for a moment if this is an closed or open question. Clearly it's an open. It doesn't have a yes/no answer. Is it thick or thin? It is thick. It's something that you'd probably have a pretty good amount of information to try and respond with. But would it actually get you extending? No, because it is a what if or a hypothetical situation. We can't truly research this and have a correct answer or what would be seemingly a correct answer. Whereas something like the first one, we can find what the original interactions were, how they interacted, what was this relationship like with non-Maori before colonization. But this second question and what if questions in general, even though they are open and thick, will not help you get extending. So it's great to think about these things, and it's important. It's how we think about history sometimes, like what would have happened, but they are not necessarily effective, thick questions because they can't be researched and answered. So I'm going to take that out of there. The synthesis portion we're going to be doing next time in class. What I would like you to do is you're going to be with your partner. You're going to do on source 2, the link to British colonialism exploration. You're going to read through the beginning of this article. These little extra paragraphs you'll have to read and decide if they're important to have as a main idea and key details, or if they're not. But you'll begin reading. You will have time as well on Monday, depending on how far you get, to finish up, because I know it is quite long. So I don't want you to rush. The goal is to work with your partner and really on this document under source 2, getting as much information, good information as you can. This part you should be able to answer pretty easily. The source evaluation might take a little bit more time, and then you can get into the main idea and important details or key details. So that's what you'll be working on. Your homework, it's also written on the board. For source 3, which is the Nat Geo article, you'll complete the source eval and you'll add 4 more main ideas. Some of you might have already gotten ahead and done that. You're adding an additional 4, not necessarily if you've done 4 that you're done. And I did actually misspeak earlier. What I would like you to try at home is for the synthesis for this first article, or this first source, I would like you to try the synthesis on your own for homework, and then we'll go through it in class. If you have any questions, you can send me an email or you can swing by tomorrow and I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, if I don't, for some reason, see you before you go home, have a good rest of your afternoon, and I will talk to you all either tomorrow or the next time we're in class.